It's 1:30. I call this hearing to order. My name is Dr. Bessie G. Jackson. I'm the hearing agent for Book Challenge, case number G2023-08-BC. Book title, A is for Activist. At this time, I would have all parties present in this hearing to please introduce themselves with their full names and their titles. And we will start with the petitioner and go around the wall to the district.
Hello, my name is Dr. Crystal Marule. I'm not sure what other titles you need. I'm a concerned parent.
Thank you. We'll come around.
My name is Wendy Ball, and I'm a specialist for Alachua County School District. Heather Barber, principal to Williger Elementary. Amanda Swall, media specialist to Williger Elementary.
Kevin Berry, director of curriculum.
Elizabeth President,
Alan is public.
Cynthia Lewis, public.
Sir in the back.
Tim Martin.
Any title?
Diane Colson, corporate media services. Deborah Prophet, concerned citizen. I'm Elizabeth O, journalist. I'm Susan Siegel, staff attorney for the district.
Deidre Talbot, legal assistant for the school district.
Kathy Gowan, Program Specialist, District.
Thank you. I'll take care of some housekeeping before we get started. I need to explain to the petitioner that while you were not able to get some sources to me directly, you understand that I serve as an impartial hearing officer. And with that, no party will engage with me with evidence or any other communication prior to the hearing. All evidence will come before the body at the hearing. So I need to explain that emails or communication with me will be done by only through the hearing officers at the district.
Let the record note that is not how the protocol was carried out.
Thank you. Okay. This hearing shall be conducted as follows. The petitioner may make an opening statement. Then the district representative may make an opening statement. The petitioner may present evidence, including their documents and testimony. Then the district representative may cross-examine the petitioner, and the petitioner may cross-examine the district. The petitioner may make a closing statement, and the district representative will make a closing statement. Any questions?
Just a comment. I asked multiple times for the clear protocol, and this was not communicated to me prior, especially about the cross-examination. Just note.
Thank you. All right, at this time, Dr. Muro, you are open to make your opening statement.
Dr. Jackson, can
Yes.
I make a statement, please?
Yes,
I did communicate multiple times with the general statement from the policy of what the process was for the hearings.
thank you. You may make your
Okay.
opening statement, Dr. Muro.
All right. Okay, hello. My name is Crystal Marule, and I am a resident of Alachua County and a parent to 3 children in this district. There's a lot of echo on this. Is there a way to tone it down or just put it further? I am deeply committed to my children's education and the success of our district. This commitment is evident through my active roles serving as the parent representative on the School Advisory Council at both Terwilliger Elementary School and Lofton High School. Additionally, I currently hold the position of NJ ROTC Booster Secretary at Gainesville High School. I take pride in the achievements of my children, with one here today because she had her wisdom teeth out on Monday, who is a National Merit Hispanic Recognition Program recipient, with another excelling as a cadet on the academic team that ranked 5th in the National Brain Brawl competition last year, and my third child being a part of the inaugural cohort in the dual language immersion program at Terwilliger Elementary School. These engagements and accomplishments underscore my unwavering dedication to their educational journey and the district's prosperity. It is precisely for these reasons that I am standing here today to challenge the circulation of the book A is for Activists by Innosanto Nagarra in the Terwilliger Elementary School Library for its non-compliance with Florida Statutes 1006. Although I am prepared to illustrate how A is for Activists falls short of meeting the Florida statutes, specifically due to its lack of suitability for student comprehension and its questionable appropriateness for the intended grade level and age group, I remind you that as per the DOE Library Media Instructional Material Training on slide 38, and it's in Exhibit 2, I think, of my documents, I quote, "Parents that are challenging or objecting to materials should not have to prove that those materials are objectionable. Instead, the individuals that choose the materials must be prepared to defend the educational value of the materials if needs arise." Beyond being a concerned parent, I possess certifications as a Florida educator and an educational media specialist. I hold several degrees, including a master's degree in education, a master's degree in bilingualism and second language acquisition, and a PhD in bilingualism and second language acquisition. My area of expertise is in psycholinguistics and sentence language processing. These credentials, while not necessary to challenge the book's selection, refute the argument that, quote, "we need to leave the selection decisions to the experts," unquote. By all regards, I am equally an expert to any of the media specialists in the district. Anticipating the argument that A is for Activists meets appropriateness criteria through peer reviews and consultations with external entities such as Follett, Horn Book Guide, and Mackin Educational Resources, it's crucial to note that these companies can assist in forming acquisition lists, but they should not serve as the sole arbiters of meeting state selection criteria. The Department of Education emphasizes the need for diverse sources, including crowdsourced reviews and professional judgment, as well as community input in the selection process. Moreover, the feedback provided in the Library Council Committee Forum notes makes it quite clear that there's no prevailing consensus about the book's suitability. These reviews reveal a striking uncertainty regarding its intended audience, spanning from preschoolers to middle schoolers. Yet, despite this lack of agreement, the decision to continue using the book implies that factors beyond educational considerations, such as political motivations, are driving this choice. In my presentation today, I will outline 3 primary points. Firstly, the book's unsuitability for the student comprehension and age appropriateness. Secondly, its contradiction with the DOE guidelines for selection. And lastly, if time permits, the procedural issues and questionable practices that have led to the continued use of this book, despite its initial non-compliance. This disregard for state selection criteria and subsequent lack of corrective action is particularly concerning when coupled with how this challenge has been managed from the start. The media specialist and principal were reluctant to engage in conversations with me. There has been a litany of procedural errors. The district openly colluded with the local media to disclose my identity and political affiliation as an attempt to intimidate me and to deter other parents from engaging with the selection process. And partisanship has clearly been influencing decisions. This highlights a troubling trend that needlessly strains the school's relationship with the broader parent community. I personally feel I am in a modern-day David and Goliath battle. On one side, a parent who's trying to advocate for their child, and on the other, a formidable might of the school district. But just like David stood tall against Goliath and declared, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord, the God, whom you have taunted. I stand here not by my own power, but by the confidence and strength I draw from God. I stand here, undeterred, seeking a fair and unbiased consideration in this hearing, and a recognition of the obvious, that based on the actual merits of the text, this book is unsuitable for elementary school students. In conclusion, I am prepared to present comprehensive evidence that unequivocally demonstrates how the mechanics, text style, and themes of A is for Activists contradict established educational benchmarks. It does not align with our state statute guidelines and should be discontinued from circulation. But beyond this debate, my sincere hope is that we would refocus on what truly matters, supporting our students' academic growth and strengthening ties between the community and the school. We need to stop letting ideologies overshadow educational goals and channel our efforts into creating an efficient learning environment for all. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, ma'am. This is a challenge regarding the political ideology of the book. On the challenge form submitted by Dr. Marule, it states that it's to promote indoctrination into Marxist and socialist ideologies, and that She says it's indoctrination into extreme right-wing ideology. The statute,
I don't think I said right wing.
pardon me?
I don't think it said right wing.
Left, except left, of course it doesn't, left wing, my error. The statute forbids us from, or permits challenges based on pornography, depiction of sexual conduct, not suitable to the needs of the children, and inappropriate for grade level. It does not proscribe any kind of content in terms of political ideology. The book is about activism that does slant toward the left side of the political spectrum, but activism doesn't just occur on the left. Activism is defined by Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary, that's the newest one I have in my office, as a doctrine that emphasizes direct, vigorous support or opposition on one side of a controversial topic. Dr. Marule is an activist herself. She's an activist on the far right for the topic of banning of books, just like the Moms of Liberty are activists on the far right for their points of view. I suggest if this book was an ABC book on far right-wing activism, it would be acceptable. Books are selected in our libraries for a variety of topics. We attempt to be viewpoint neutral, information to the left, information to the right. Information may be controversial, maybe not. If Dr. Marule does not like the politics in this book that her child might check out, and let me make a point, this is not an instructional material. It is not assigned as a topic in any class at Terwilliger. It's a library book, and library books are checked out when students come for a library class in the library. If Dr. Marule was not happy with this book, all she had to do was fill out the form and tell the media consultant, do not let her child check out the book. She should not be able to dictate what other parents with opposite politics would permit their children to read. It's the kind of a picture book that would be something a parent and a child might read together if the parent wanted the child to understand left-wing politics, much as Dr. Marule may choose books to read to her children about right-wing politics. I looked at a number of the specific complaints. One of them that was most interesting was, it's an ABC book, so the R's talk about radical reds and a bunch of things, but has a picture. It's a cartoon, but not a funny cartoon, but a cartoon of faces in a group extending out toward the infinite, but in the group appearing like they're having a candle vigil. I looked at them and I was only able to recognize potentially two faces, Dr. King and Rosa Parks. And as far as I'm concerned, they were not known as Nazi or communist sympathizers, but that was Dr. Marule's complaint about that particular picture. Later on, when I got Dr. Marule's evidence yesterday, I looked and it had an outline of all those people with numbers that tell me who they are. And then I wasn't even sure if I recognized most of them. So I'm not sure if I, at my age, which I am not happy to reveal, is pretty up there. I don't think a 6 to 9-year-old is going to be influenced or shocked by seeing any of those pictures. Then there was one about silly, selfish scoundrels sucking on dinosaur slug with the S's. And her complaint was it villainizes those who support use of fossil fuels. That is a totally political issue that has nothing to do with whether it's bad for children. My goodness, many of my children or my grandchildren are worried about climate change. And that's what that whole issue is about. But it's political. It is not something that should be dealt with by this statute. The last one I thought was an interesting one was out Z for Zapatista, complaining about violent guerrilla warfare. The Zapatistas were indigenous Mexican people who fought against early attempts to get Mexico united. Much like a bunch of fellows in the 1700s in Boston Harbor tossed tea over the side of a ship. You know, today's guerrillas may be tomorrow's patriots. I believe these complaints are based only on politics and should not be considered. I will make one brief comment. I take offense at at colluding with the media to make her name public. We are a public institution. We are governed by the Public Records Laws, Chapter 119. The name of Dr. Marule in making a book challenge is a public record, and if we are asked about that, we must reveal it, or we suffer the consequences of litigation and attorney's fees. So there was no collusion. We adhered to the requirements of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the petitioner may now present evidence, including documents and testimony from witnesses, that this instructional material does not meet the criteria for Florida Statute 1006.31, Section 2, or 1006.40, Section 3D, if it was selected for a course or otherwise made available to students in the district but not subject to public notice. Review comments are hearing. You may proceed with your evidence, Dr. Murrell.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have a lot of responses to the opening statement from the district, but I believe they're covered in my presentation, so when they come up, I will highlight them as we go through. I just wanted to start with, as I had mentioned in my opening statement, I have 3 angles I'd like to take to discuss this book, and the first one is its unsuitability for student comprehension and age appropriateness, as according to the criteria of the statute. Let me remind you that the book that we're speaking about is A is for Activist. It is written and illustrated by Innosanto Nagarra. As I go through this text and share with you, I just want everyone to keep in mind the best benchmarks for English language arts and the standards. I assume we would agree that this is considered an informational text, so I'm going to limit my comments to discussing its structure, central idea, author's purpose and perspective, and argument. First and foremost, I want to turn to the overview of the text provided by the Macking Educational Resource. I'm assuming that this is the overview that the media specialist had used to guide her decision to include this text in her circulation.
Dr. Murrell, are those your PowerPoints that you presented in the notebook?
This is my presentation, but anything cited in the PowerPoint, like this, for example, you can see at the bottom, it's part of my Exhibit 3.
Exhibit 3?
Exhibit 3.
Thank you.
But I provide it, but the full context of the resources are noted in the bottom left of each slide of what exhibit it corresponds to.
I can't read it. I'm sorry, but
I
anyway.
didn't know the screens would be so small.
Yes, as long as you tell
I
me.
can give you a copy of my presentation.
I think I have it. Did you send it to?
You have it, 'cause
I
it's
don't.
complete. I have a small version of it, or I can email it to you.
No, I would need it now for the hearing.
Dr. Jackson, she did not provide a copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, we don't, okay. I'm going to allow you to briefly present this because we do not have it. I have not reviewed it. For,
It's in the first 3 pages, I'm sorry for that. So it starts in
okay. In this total document, are you prepared to present all these slides?
No, ma'am, just the first third, I think.
Okay, because I haven't had time to review, but I'm going to allow you to proceed to a point.
Anything that's resourced or referenced is in the exhibits, which was shared. And I made it clear to the district because I received an email Friday afternoon around 3:30 that I had to present all my evidence by Tuesday. That was the first notice I had been given. So I did the best I could in 2 business days to put together my list of evidence, but I made it very clear that my presentation of my argumentation wasn't prepared in that time period. So anything referenced, any document referenced is in the list of evidence that I submitted on Tuesday.
But Dr. Muir, you understand that there is an adequate amount of time that the hearing officer has to have to review information. And we're also within the 30-day period for the hearing. Now, you did have a right to waive that in writing, but since you were here now and we had not reviewed, I'm going to allow you to present
Well, I'd like
this.
to continue, but however, let me remind you, I'm a mother, I'm not a lawyer. I asked multiple times for explanation of protocol, and I was never told that evidence needed to be presented in advance until Friday afternoon at 3:30.
And Dr. Jackson, we did not know until Friday afternoon at 3:30 or just before then either.
Oh, that the material was coming.
That was when we were told that we would like the material actually by Monday, not Tuesday.
Yes.
Well, I find that comment a little interesting because When they sent me the notification at 3:30 that I had to present my evidence by Tuesday, attached was all their evidence. So I would say they had to have known slightly sooner.
Okay. I'm going to allow, because inasmuch as this is our first district hearing, so I am going to allow you briefly to present your portions of your slides. Okay. Dr. Murrow, you,
Everything is referenced to the evidence I submitted.
okay, proceed.
Carrying on, this is the summary provided by the Mackin Educational Resources that I'm assuming guided the judgment of the library media specialist to select this text. And I want to highlight at the top, it indicates that it's appropriate for grade levels 4 to 7, unless it means age 4 to 7, but I'm pretty certain that means grade level 4 to 7. And the publisher's description says, this best-selling ABC book is written and illustrated for the next generation of progressives, families who want their kids to grow up in a space that is unapologetic about activism, environmental justice, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, and everything else that activists believe in and fight for. A continuous bestseller for the Triangle Square, we heard from booksellers around the country who clamored for a large format edition that would appeal to children over the age of 5. This is the original version of the book. It was a 4x4-inch hardback board book. They wanted to make it a book that was larger to appeal to children ages 5 and up. Look, consulting the peer-reviewed resources that were also shared by the district from Follett and from Horn Book Guide, it indicates that the appropriate grades would be pre-K to K2, ages 3 to 7, grades 1 being used in other districts by grade 1, grade 2, grade K, baby to pre-K. On the Destiny catalog for the school itself, for the library, it's indicated as reading level of 3.1 and interest level of K to 3. And on Amazon, it says it's for ages 1 to 3.
That's irrelevant. Amazon is not a part of our,
Okay. So why can't reviewers agree on the age appropriateness of this book? Because, as you're about to see, this book was not written by an educator or even an experienced writer, but rather by an activist who designed a book to appeal through imagery and rhyme to the youngest readers, using a Lexile level more appropriate to high-achieving middle schoolers to present topics that correlate to college-level curricula. The appropriate question is, why would the reviewers in a peer review process who are supposed to be critical of such gross textual flaws disregard such issues and recommend this text for its academic purposes? Turning now to benchmark 2.3, I think it was, about the author's perspective, let me introduce you to the author. Innosanto Nagarra is a children's author, activist, and graphic designer. He is the author of the alphabet book, A is for Activists, as well as the other children's books, Counting on
Dr.
Community.
Miro, irrelevant.
I think the background of the author,
The author's intent, we have no one here to justify his claim.
according to the benchmarks for the standards for language, ELA, in the state, identifying the author's purpose is relevant to interpreting the text.
But he's not here to justify his intent.
Well, if you have evidence to offer to the contrary, I'd be happy to accept.
What slide do you have this on?
This is in my exhibit number 3.
I don't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I told you that the pages I gave you, I didn't realize I was sharing that. That's my copy. It's lacking the first few slides.
It's, excuse
You
me,
did not provide me a copy either, I'm sorry.
stands. It's irrelevant.
You have a copy.
Dr. Muro, the civility, it's irrelevant because we have not been able to review, and the author's not here to justify his intent.
I think it's relevant to establishing the age appropriateness because in an interview, which is in the evidence that I shared with you, he states that it's all about the age group he's trying to reach, and when his son was 2, he wrote this book, A is for Activists, for his 2-year-old son.
At the library,
Relevant to age appropriateness of the book. What
excuse me, Dr. Muro,
audience is.
the book that I have here that's from the library, this is not, it's cataloged and the 300 social sciences.
So what age is it for?
It's in the social sciences. It's not an alphabet book at the library. Now, we're at the Alachua County Library of Terwilliger Elementary. That's where we are here to hear.
Okay, but
So-
I'm trying to establish the age appropriateness and not knowing what age is being said it's appropriate.
It's in the 300s. It's not an age-appropriate level.
300 doesn't tell you age appropriate.
That's
It tells
right.
you the Dewey Decimal System for cataloging a book in a library.
Excuse, oh, I'm sorry. We stenographer can't keep us going here. The question is, we have to stick to we're here for the Alachua County School Board, Terwilliger Elementary School only, that library, having this book in the collection. We're not here for a worldwide or any other district or any other state. So we have to keep it pertinent to the collection of Terwilliger Elementary.
I understand that, but I'm trying to establish the age appropriateness and argue that it's not age appropriate, but I'm not clear on what age is targeted by this book. And tell me the Dewey Decimal System, for its location in the catalog, does not clarify the age appropriateness.
It will not.
Agreed. So the age appropriateness, as indicated in the catalog of Destiny, which is available for all books in the district, including Terwilliger, states that it's for reading levels 3.1. However, the acquisition form that they used said it was appropriate for grades 4 to 7. I simply want to know which grade or age it's aimed at so I can make my argument that it's inappropriate for that age. Choose your age and I'll make my argument.
Excuse me, Dr. Miller, where are you getting your information from for that particular?
For which one? The Destiny here? This is the online card catalog that's available in the district to let every parent know of what books are sitting in which library and their information. This is a district page.
Do you have that in your documents?
I do. It's in Exhibit 3.
Exhibit 3 of which?
We also have the school media specialist and the district media specialist who can confirm that Destiny indeed is the district catalog system.
So it's in your evidence, Exhibit 3, what page, please?
1.
It's my District 3, evidence 3, start with page 15.
In the Challenger Exhibit 3, when you go to the file for Destiny, it's the one and only page filed there. Ma'am, this is going to be a real long day if we have to just establish what's already established by the district.
No, ma'am. I'm trying to keep up with your presentation because I do need that. Sorry for the delay. Continue. Let me find it.
The question is, it's very difficult to establish the age appropriateness because the reviewers themselves cannot decide. And that's because if you look at the lexile level, the vocabulary level, the content level, and the imagery that's presented, it's mixing age groups. I think it's relevant that the author himself said he wrote it for his 2-year-old son. That's my point. He also describes himself as a Marxist and says that capitalism is inherently exploitative and an alienating system, and that socialism presents a positive alternative. He also states that the U.S. government is the main impediment to peace.
Dr. Muro, excuse me, please. The author's admission of his information you're reading to us is not relevant. So let's discontinue with, he's not here to justify his intent.
Okay, I think it will be relevant as I show the allusions to Marxism throughout the text, that he is an open Marxist.
That's not the,
for activism. Okay, my statement stands. I'll carry on.
yes, thank you.
Okay. So turning to the Library, Media, and Instructional Media Training Guide, this is a training that all media specialists in the district needed to complete to be able to exercise their role as a media specialist. This is slide 11 of that training and is available in my Exhibit 2. Now, when determining if a text is suitable to student needs and appropriate for their age level, considerations should include student ability to comprehend the material, the degree to which the material will be explained or supplemented by classroom instruction, the educational purpose of the material, the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination, age and grade level of students, maturity of students, and erring on the side of caution. I will be referring back to these guidelines as I go throughout my presentation. But to really understand what we're talking about, I wanted to make some comments about the actual content within the text. Under the letter C, C is for co-op, cooperating cultures, creative counter to corporate vultures. O and cats, can you find the cats? The word corporate vultures, the definition, a vulture capitalist is an investor who seeks to extract value from companies in decline. The goal is to swoop in when sentiment is low and the company is trading at rock bottom price to take whatever action is necessary to engineer a quick turnaround and sell it for a profit. Even if you argue that this book is appropriate for 4th graders versus 2-year-olds, I doubt that any elementary school student would understand what a corporate vulture is or even what actions or stocks or turnaround for profit implies. Turning to the letter D, little democracy, little d democracy, more than voting you'll agree. Dictators detest it, donkeys don't get it, but you and me, we demand equality. Equal rights Black, brown, or white, clean and healthy is a right. Every place we live and play, environmental justice is the way. Let me just point out the symbolism in this graphic. It has the donkey representing the Democratic Party, and the elephant, humorously, I suppose, with a four-star general hat.
Dr. Miro, irrelevant.
How is the symbolism included in the picture of the text?
We are talking about the age of comprehension. Is that what you're
Well,
bringing forth?
Let me show the relevance. Few elementary students, if any, would be able to recognize the symbols of the Democratic donkey and the GOP elephant.
That would be for the parent to decide with the student if they were discussing that book at their side.
I'm sorry. The media specialist is supposed to consider, when selecting a text for their library, the age and grade level of the student, the maturity of the student, and the ability of the student to comprehend the material. This is not dependent on the parents. This is dependent on the media specialist when selecting the text, if the students in their school would be able to comprehend the material. I showed, according to the symbolism, that it's highly unlikely that elementary school students are going to recognize the symbolism of the Democratic donkey and the GOP elephant. That is my point. In addition, the quote of little d democracy, more than voting, you'll agree, is echoing a common socialist cry, such as democracy means more than just holding elections, as championed by George Soros's Open Society. Lastly, environmental justice is the equitable distribution of environmental risks and benefits. Again, this equitable distribution is a Marxist principle. G is for grassroots, sprouting from below, sharing nutrients and the water's flow. Below the surface, we're all connected. Stronger together, we grow. This echoes this other verse, which states, we are like seeds and the people are like the soil. Wherever we go, we must unite with the people, take root and blossom among them. Let me tell you who said that statement. This was Mao Zedong from Communist China. And who did he say were like the seeds that grow under their earth and connect? The communists. He also used...
Dr. Miro, I'm sorry.
I'll continue.
Yes, those are commentaries. Please, let's get, thank you.
Okay. J is for justice, yay for justice. Jia Xinjiang, Juanita Jamal, justice for the janitors, justicia for all. When we look at the benchmark V13 context and connotation, the idea of inference is that a student is able to make an educated guess using reasoning or background knowledge to determine the meaning of an unknown word. A student is unlikely able to infer the meaning of these people because I, with a PhD, could not identify who they were even after a thorough Google search. Although I could find who the justice for janitors were. They were a militant unionizing group that used strikes and violent action to push forward their social movement and rooted this in their struggle in Central America.
Dr. Miro,
Ma'am?
let's stick with the facts that pertain to the book, not your interpretation of what was
It's not
meant.
an interpretation of who justice for the
But
janitors.
that's your research. Please, let's stay with the book.
I'm applying inference skills, but I will continue. Kings are fine for story time, knights are fun to play. But when we make decisions, we will choose the people's way. LGBTQ, love those who you choose, love is true. Liberate your notions of limited emotions. Celebrate with pride our links of devotion. We will choose the people's way. The people, according to a Marxist definition, are the classes, strata, and social groups which favor, support, and work for the cause of socialist construction. Enemies of the state are the social forces and groups which resist the social revolution and are hostile to sabotage social construction. This is paraphrased again from Mao's Little Red Book. So when talking about we will choose the people's way, that is not an inclusive term. LGBTQ, love who you choose because love is true. Liberate your notions of limited emotions. Celebrate with pride our links of devotion. Let me reiterate that according to the guidelines of selection, priority shall be given to the selection of materials that align with the next generation Sunshine State standards. However, according to House Bill 1557, House Bill 1069, LGBTQ topics are prohibited in classroom instruction from K to 8. Thus, this text should not be prioritized for selection.
Dr. Miro,
Ma'am?
that's a different interpretation. This is not for discussion. This is a book in the library. Continue, please. Irrelevant.
My point, without interpretation, is that the statute says priority shall be given to the selection of materials, referring to library materials, that align with the next generation Sunshine State standards.
Okay.
Alternatively, or additionally, in the state statutes, LGBTQ topics are prohibited from classroom instruction K to 8. Megaphones marching, movimiento music, hip hip hooray, it must be May Day. The May Day riots occurred in Cleveland on May 1st of 1919, marked a major episode of unrest that characterized the rising tensions in American society at the time of the First Red Scare, in the wake of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. The riots began when an anti-socialist veteran attempted to take the red flag of a marching pro-socialist veteran. The subsequent clashes pitted the socialist marchers against a group of self-styled patriots opposed to socialism dubbed loyalists by the Cleveland Press. The city used mounted police, army trucks, and even a battle tank from the Western Front to restore order. 2 people died and many were injured. This cartoonish representation with a positive balanced emotion does not align with what actually happened on that day, as seen in the image to the right.
Dr. Muro,
Ma'am?
that's still your research on what his intent is. He's not here to justify. You have taken the M and researched it for what, that's not what he has here.
How can I don't want to make any, I'm not a lawyer. How do I make a mistake of, what I want to show you is what's being referenced and what that reference is going to. I think it's important for interpreting the text to know what its allusions or references are to.
If someone else would take the same picture and letters, they can come up with a different interpretation than you have. So we have to stick to the facts of what we have in front of us.
All I'm trying to establish is the fact of what May Day is.
No, May Day could be a May Day for me for celebration of the beginning of the May season. That's my I'm just trying to give you a relevance of your interpretation.
I appreciate your
Okay,
corrections.
thank you.
I will try to keep my commentary minimum and stick to the law. N is for no, 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 yes to what we want, no to what must go. No, 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 no justice, no peace. Open minds operate best, critical thinking over tests. Wisdom can't be memorized, educate, agitate, organize. The slogan, no justice, no peace, implies that peaceful action is impossible without justice and urges citizens to demonstrate against injustice, even if doing so results in violence. Also, educate, agitate, organize, a quote from my sources in Exhibit 6, education, agitation, and organizing are 3 interlinked, not separate approaches to building the base for socialist ideas. To build a movement, an organization had to do all 3 at once. Lenin, which the author of this book cited as his inspiration in many of his things, Lenin, from Soviet Russia, very much agreed with this perspective, noting that the slogan correctly summarized the necessity for socialists to merge theoretical and practical work into one.
Dr. Muro,
All right, I'll skip this.
please, no more interpretations of his meanings. Please.
I think it's just inferring what he's actually saying in the text.
That's inference that you have interpreted. Please, let's stick with what we have.
Welcome counter inferences from others. But anyway, on the question of text style and text complexity, Q is for questioning, questioning coercion. Querying qualities, counter false assertions. Questioning coercion, querying qualities, counter false assertions. This is very high for text complexity because it includes domain-specific words, academic vocabulary, archaic terms, and terms that can be read with ambiguity. That definition of text complexity comes from the best standards. Radical Reds, the headline said, ruinous rioters, the rumors spread, rabble-rousing riffraff, really? Again, Ms. Siegel already pointed out that the reference to this image, referring to communists in the image, she herself stated at her age she could only easily identify perhaps 1 or 2 individuals in the picture. However, the author provided a who's who key to who these people are. And just taking a look at one of them, Ella Baker, again, an open Marxist. She combined Black Baptist missionary values of charity, humility, and service with economic theories of Marxist and social values.
Dr. Muro, excuse me, we don't have that.
It's
I don't-
my exhibit.
I'm sorry, but I do not have that in my reference to it. The author has a key to who these people are. Inadmissible.
Okay, well then you can look it up later because it's true.
No, well, inadmissible is not relevant. I do not have it, and we don't have that key, and it hasn't been seen.
I included it with my exhibits.
Well, it didn't make it to me.
It's in, it might have been in the add-on, but I did include it with my exhibits.
Well, it's irrelevant. Please move
Well,
on.
what's relevant is I could go through 3 other members that are easily identified with the who's who key.
Dr. Muro, please. Thank you.
S is for sun, soul, solar, superstar, stellar power, fuels all life, not just flowers, energized homes, cars, and showers. Silly, selfish scoundrels sucking on dinosaur sludge, boo, hiss. Again, I turn to the benchmark of V1.3, context and connotation, inference. The reader is able to make an educated guess using reasoning or background knowledge to determine the meaning of an unknown word. It is very unlikely that an elementary school student would be able to apply the interpretation or the reference of dinosaur sludge as the idea that petroleum or crude oil comes from dinosaurs. And in fact, that would be unfactual, and not true. The idea of boo, hiss, encouraging shaming for people using fossil fuels without being able to give the students the complexity behind the debate. Without fossil fuels, millions of people would die, mainly those who are living on the edge of poverty anyway. Mao also weaponized shame. He said all erroneous ideas, all poisonous weeds, all ghosts and monsters must be subjected to criticism. T, let me turn to T. T is for trans, for trains, tiaras, tulips, tractors, and tigers too. Trust in the true, the he, she, they, that is you. Again, let me reiterate that according to the state statutes, priority shall be given to selections of materials that align with next generation sunshine standards. LGBTQ topics are prohibited from classroom instruction K to 8. Also, when analyzing the text complexity here is quite high. The semantic distance between the terms trans, trains, tiaras, tulips, and tigers would impede comprehension in early readers. Trust in the true, the he, she, they, that is you. Here, I can't even infer what's meant by that. What is the you? Multiple pronouns? U is for weekends. U is for worker rights. Wait, that's not you, that's W. U is for union. Union, yes. This is a confusing use of the letter U when they actually want to use the letter W, and it's not quite clear what the joke is. Also, again, workers' rights and unions are not topics that are covered in elementary school curricula. In fact, I remember reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle in 10th grade. V is for Vox. What did you say? Oh, I'm sorry. V is for Vox. What? Did you say Fox? No, I said Vox. Did you say box? No, Vox. Rocks, blocks, socks, Vox. Vox of the people, voice of the populi. Better go see the letter D. The Latin phrase Vox populi, Vox Dei means the voice of the people. The voice of the people is the voice of God. This is an old proverb, and it's very concerning considering the Marxist definition of the people, the classes, strata, and social groups which favor, support, and work for the cause of socialist construction. Also, the role of God and the role of the populace is a very complex philosophical debate that elementary students do not possess the maturity to engage in. And then, looking at the text itself, although Latin roots, prefixes, and suffixes are introduced in elementary school, Latin phrases are not instructed until 12th grade, according to the benchmark ELA 12V12. Y is for you and youth, your planet, your rights, your future, your truth. Y is for yes, 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 yes. Your truth promotes relativism over objectivism and violates House Bill 7, which says members of the instructional staff of the public schools subject to the rules of the State Board of Education and the district school board shall teach efficiently and faithfully using the books and materials required that meet the highest standards for professionalism and historical accuracy, following the prescribed courses of study and employing improved methods of instruction. The following, the history, so they should be teaching this, the history and the content of the Declaration of the Independence, including national sovereignty, natural law, self-evident truth, equality of all persons, limited government, popular sovereignty, and inalienable rights of liberty, life, liberty, and property, and how they form the philosophical foundations of our government. Self-evident truths is at odds with your truth, which is a relativist statement. Thus, it should not be included in our materials, and additionally, it is a debate that far exceeds the maturity level of elementary school students. Finally, Z is for Zapatista, of course. Let's positively balance a very complex social movement. And I argue it's a guerrilla organization that not just an indigenous uprising. In fact, the Zapatistas was the creation of a non-indigenous and orthodox Marxist guerrilla organization, the National Liberation Forces, that manipulated the indigenous communities of Chiapas, not all of Mexico. This had nothing to do with the Mexican Revolution at all. That manipulated the indigenous communities of Chiapas into participating in a deadly and disastrous uprising. The Zapatistas' supposedly distinctive politics were just an attempt to sell old communist wine in new indigenous bodies. Ask somebody living in Chiapas now if they're happy with the Zapatista autonomous government. And that concludes my part one. I'm ready to move on to part two, where I'm going to highlight now specifically the contradictions with the DOE guidelines for selection. Let me remind you of section 1006.4, so forth, that all materials in the school library should be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented, and appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material are used and made available. Again, additionally on slide 11 of the library media and instructional media training guide, considerations should include, as I stated earlier, the student ability to comprehend the material and other topics which I'll cover further in my presentation. But let's start with the student ability to comprehend the material. According to the best ELA standards, when evaluating, for all reading standards, when evaluating text complexity to determine if a text is appropriate to grade level, Quantitative, qualitative, and student-centered demands should be considered, and they give you resources for this in Appendix B. Let me turn to Appendix B.
Where are these documents?
This is my Exhibit 2, under Florida's best standards. Specifically, page 148. Okay, so when looking at text complexity, there's 3 components of text complexity: qualitative, quantitative, and student-centered. Each of these factors is equally important. Singularly, they reveal a partial and potentially misleading impression of a text. So let's look at these 3 dimensions of quantitative, qualitative, and student-centered. When we look at the quantitative level, the guidelines indicate that we should look at the Flesch-Kincaid text complexity measures as well as the Lexile analysis. This scorecard is available in Appendix B of the best standards and indicates for grades K through 12 what the Flesch-Kincaid score should be, as well as the Lexile level.
Dr. Miro, that's irrelevant. Objections. Objections, irrelevant.
How is, I'm sorry, where did I go wrong in my argumentation? If consideration should include students' ability to comprehend material, we have to evaluate it according to the best standards of quantitative, qualitative, and student-centered demands. They provide a rubric for doing it. How is it irrelevant?
We're here for this book.
And I'm about to analyze the
Well,
quantitative value of the
you-
themes in that book.
Irrelevant for you to go through all of the standards for it. Let's deal with the quality of this book based on the standards.
I'm
Okay,
going to apply those standards to that text.
please, let's get to that portion. Okay.
Just give you a little background of where I was at. So looking at the Flesch-Kincaid analysis, these are the scores that it's supposed to show for books K through 12. I ran my own Flesch-Kincaid analysis as well as some additional analyses that also speak to text complexity. I also ran a lexical frequency analysis. Both of these
that-
showed, I'm sorry.
Irrelevant, Dr. Miro.
How is it irrelevant if I'm trying to establish the text?
Your determination, you said you were doing a comparison of your determination against.
I'm sorry, I must have misspoke. I ran a Flesch-Kincaid analysis. I used the tool Flesch-Kincaid, which is highlighted in the best standards, and I ran the analysis.
Quick, let's see what you have. Go ahead.
So the Flesch-Kincaid results that this book is targeted for ages 3.08, but I also ran the Flesch-Kincaid analysis also gives you additional measures such as the forecast grade level, which said that this book is appropriate for 9th graders, and I also ran the CEFR, which is the European framework, the Common European Framework. There it is, the Common European Framework, and it ranked it at the C2 level, which is the highest level of proficiency.
Do I have a copy of your analysis that you ran? The
Yes, ma'am,
paperwork?
all my exhibits.
Not your chart. I'm from the program itself and the printout.
I would have to double check. I think I submitted it, but if not, I could send that to you.
Well, let's move on, because I don't have that material to validate it.
All right. Turning to the Lexile level, it was hard to find the Lexile level in the publisher's information, but I did find one publisher review, which was on booksforschool.com, and indicated that the Lexile level was AD, which is adult-directed, better when read aloud to a student rather than having the student read independently. AD is the designation for the Lexile level for picture books because they're usually read to a child rather than a child reading them themselves.
Excuse me, what source?
This is from booksforschool.com that had information, the publisher's information, and included the Lexile level as being AD.
Irrelevant.
However,
Irrelevant. Objections. I don't have a copy of that to review it.
in addition, I ran a Lexile range using a Lexile calculator, and that is included in there, and it established that Lexile range of 210 to
Tell me what page I can look at.
Exhibit 4, under the document Lexile calculator.
No, I don't have it.
I submitted it.
All right, move on.
Nonetheless, my point here is that it established the Lexile level at being between 210 and 410, which would put this book squarely appropriate for K to first graders. Again, so turning back to the criteria of the student ability to comprehend the material, when we look at the first level of analysis, text complexity, and we use the rubric available in the best standards to determine the quantitative text complexity, it's impossible to indicate because there's inconsistent findings. The Flesch-Kincaid and similar tools yielded results anywhere from 3rd to 9th grade and beyond, and the Lexile analysis yielded a result of 80 to 400, which corresponds to K to first.
Dr. Miro, objection overruled. Move beyond, please.
All right, moving on to the qualitative analysis. So to determine the qualitative appropriateness of a text, again, there's a rubric provided in the best standards. It's on page 148. Qualitative measures are the features of a text that are related to the content and meaning. They can be ranked from low, mid, to high, and they're divided on several criterion, including meaning, language, purpose, organization, graphics, and vocabulary. I'll walk through the first one with you, and then I'll show you what I think are the answers to the other one. But the meaning, the text has a single layer of meaning explicitly stated. I think we all can agree it does not. As you have properly argued, there could be other interpretations of the text other than the one I concluded. Blend of explicit and implicit details, few uses of multiple meanings, isolated instances of metaphor. No, this book is full of multiple meanings and metaphors. Thus, the only conclusion is that this book ranks as high complexity. The text has multiple levels of meaning, and there may be intentional ambiguity. Likewise, when we look at the criterion of language, figurative language is used throughout the text. Multiple interpretations may be possible. I think you agree. Purpose, the author's purpose is obscure and subject to interpretation. I think so. Well,
Yes.
I don't think it's obscure to me, but it seems to be the consensus of the room that it's obscure. Organization, I will give this a low complexity level because it's organized around the alphabet, so that's quite straightforward. The graphics are not simple, and in fact, they are essential to understanding the text, hence a key of a who's who. And lastly, vocabulary. The text frequently uses domain-specific words, academic vocabulary, archaic terms, or terms that can be read with ambiguity. I point to words such as vox populi, querying, coercion, vultures, or corporate vultures. Thus, in consideration of text complexity, on the qualitative banner, we have 5 out of 6 would equal high complexity. Turning to the third benchmark, which is the student-centeredness and applying the same rubric available in the best standards, this rubric approaches background knowledge, comprehension strategies, thematic content, and cognitive load. Again, for students to fully understand the text, they must have background knowledge of the topic. I think we all agree that would make it high complexity. The text may demand stamina, comprehension, and inferential skills at the upper boundary of the student's developmental level. I would argue it's even beyond their level. The themes and details in the text are at the upper boundary of students' developmental level of understanding. Some subject matter may be sensitive, but it's appropriate to the student's age level. I would argue that it's beyond their age level. And the task associated with the text is of high content complexity level involving multiple cognitive steps. As we have determined through our back and forth, that is obviously the case. Thus, taking all these findings together about the ability for students to comprehend the material, on the level of text complexity quantitative, we had inconsistent findings. On the metric of qualitative, 5 out of 6 categories indicated that it was of high complexity. And of the student-centeredness, all 4 were high, if not beyond high complexity. Turning now to other guidelines or considerations, I'll group these ones together for time. The degree to which the material will be explained, supplemented by classroom instruction, the educational purposes of the material, and the age grade level of the students. Again, I turn to the best standards where it says, reading comprehension depends more on relevant background knowledge than on mastery of reading strategies. We cannot think deeply, creatively, or critically about a subject if we have little knowledge of it. So I'm not going to go through each one of these benchmarks, but I can guarantee you that this book does not match these benchmarks for the K-5 curriculum. Due to its complexity, text complexity, A for activists is not grade appropriate for these standards or benchmarks. And I will ask the curriculum director of the district to verify my interpretations of this, but I do think he's going to agree. Due to its text complexity, A is for activists is not a grade appropriate for these standards or benchmarks. Again, neither for figurative language, paraphrasing, summarizing. And this one's fun, comparative reading, researching, and using information. And for many of the topics presented in A is for activists, there are not additional sources available in the Media Center if students would be curious to know more about it. For example, I used the search term Zapatistas and Chiapas in the Destiny platform and found—
Excuse me, Dr. Muro, that's your research. We're sticking to the one book, A for activists.
Maybe I misspoke.
Okay.
To apply comparative reading standards and researching and information. Compare and contrast accounts of the same event using primary and or secondary sources. Compare and contrast how 2 authors present the information. Compare 2 texts of the same topic. My point is there's no other text in the library that touches on the topic of Zapatistas or Chiapas in the school library. Thus, it doesn't meet the standard. Morphology, Latin roots and affixes. Again, the Latin phrases are not introduced until the high school level.
Objection
What's the objection?
with the elementary of the book, not the subject of your research. Dr.
My
Muro,
point is-
how
my
many
point-
more
I
slides?
think you misunderstood me. My
How many
point-
more slides do you have
A handful.
in essence of time? Can you summarize us, please?
Okay, my point there is it doesn't meet the benchmarks. I'll summarize. It doesn't meet the benchmarks. All right. Thus, in summary, the text A is for activists does not supplement classroom instruction and has limited educational purposes as it is not aligned with the Florida best standards for grades K to 5. All right, let's go to the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination. Avoiding unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination. At the district level of the challenge of this review, it was shared, slide 4, the Library Media Instructional Material Training transcript that said, the Library Media Center shall provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty with diversity of appeal and with the representation of different points of view. However, the previous 2 slides, which I just showed you, clearly advise the media specialist to avoid materials that include bias or indoctrination and or unsolicited theories or strategies that may lead
Dr.
to
Muro.
indoctrination.
Dr. Muro,
Yes, ma'am.
objection. Relevance in the selection policy of the district. Please.
Let me make it
let's-
relevant. Let me provide how this is relevant. In
Please, in
training-
the essence of time, can you summarize, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to make the point that media specialists are trained on certain guidelines and criteria to select the content. Those guidelines are very relevant to the argument that this book was improperly selected. Those guidelines indicate, this is not my interpretation, this is in the guidelines, that media specialists should avoid materials that include bias or indoctrination and or unsolicited theories or strategies that may lead to student indoctrination.
It's in the guidelines, Dr. Miro, but your interpretation is what the media specialist's decision was when she selected that book.
And
So we didn't-
I'm establishing what the guidelines are, and now I'm establishing why this does not meet the guidelines. So, indoctrination is the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically, to imbue with a usually partisan or sectarian opinion, point of view, or principle. Let me just take 2 examples from this text. Z is for Zapatista, of course, and the silly,
Dr. Miro, excuse me, we have gone there. We've heard you.
but not for my point on indoctrination. If you please would give me a fair opportunity to present my arguments, I would appreciate that. This is on the criteria of avoiding indoctrination and bias. Thus, this Z is for Zapatista is a partisan statement that is positively balanced, but is too complex to understand, whereas silly, selfish scoundrels sucking on dinosaur sludge is a negatively balanced partisan statement, too complex to understand. Both are simplified for a child hearing this book to Zapatistas equal good, people who use fossil fuels equal bad. This is so reminiscent of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, that it's ridiculous at this point. Moving on, priority shall be given to the selection of materials that align with the next generation sunshine standards. They should support academic standards and curriculum and follow Florida statutes. I can go through them, but for the sake of time, I think you're familiar with HB 7, HB 1557, HB 1069, and I will summarize. A is for activists clearly presents a set of beliefs that are imbued with a partisan or sectarian opinion, Marxism, which are not critically assessed and violates Florida state statutes. Students do not have the age level, the maturity, or the lexical ability to analyze critically the content presented in this book. Finally, turning to erring on the side of caution. Although, to avoid errors, state statutes and guidance from the training says that peer reviews should be consulted, but not only peer reviews, but also crowdsourced reviews. As I already highlighted, that the peer reviews that were shared already point to problematic content within this textbook, and it should have raised concern about the suitability. But upon doing more crowdsourced reviews, these concerns were also echoed. And if you think I'm just partisan and biased, here's one from somebody who liked the book. She said, I heard great things about this book and was so excited to check it out.
Dr. Miro, irrelevant. Others' opinions.
It's a crowdsourced review, which is indicated
Others'
in the
opinion,
guidelines
irrelevant.
to be evaluated.
Irrelevant
How?
objection.
How is that irrelevant?
Let's move on with essence of time, please.
Additionally, according to slide 11 of the training, media specialists should always err on the side of caution when selecting materials. It's good practice to assess whether or not you as the adult making book selection decisions would be comfortable reading aloud the material in question in a public meeting. If you would not be comfortable reading the material in a public setting, then you should lean towards not making the material available in a school library for children. So the question is, would you be comfortable reading A is for Activists aloud in front of the Florida Board of Education? If the answer is no, then you should lean towards not making the material available in the school library for children. Lastly, considering on the topic of erring on the side of caution, you have references that you could go to. You could consider titles from the state standards book list, such as the ELA Best Sample Text and the Civic Literacy Reading List. One, which strikes as very similar and would fill that void on that 300 level shelf, is D is for Democracy, A Citizen's Alphabet by Alyssa Grodin. However, this is currently lacking from the Terwilliger School Library, as are the other
Dr. Muro,
11
excuse me,
on this recommended list.
irrelevant, objections.
It's in the standards, so I don't think it's irrelevant. Anyway, in summary, publisher, peer, and crowdsourced reviews raise concerns about the appropriateness of this book. Unless you would feel comfortable reading this book in front of the DOE, you should lean towards not including it in the Terwilliger collection. A more appropriate book for the 300 section of the library, which is similar in style as D is for Democracy. It is recommended by the best standards, but not currently included in the collection. Thus, this is my total summary of all the criterion that we viewed together. When we evaluate the student ability to comprehend the material, it is found that the high text complexity, both on quantitative, qualitative, and also student-centered metrics, will impede students' ability to comprehend the material at the elementary school level. The degree which the material will be explained, supplemented by classroom instruction, according to the state statutes and the Florida Best Standards, the contents of this text will not be explained or supplemented by classroom instruction because they are 1, prohibited topics, and or 2, not aligned with the standards for K-5. The educational purpose of the material. There is no educational purpose of this material at the K-5 level, as it does not align with the best standards and benchmarks and includes topics that are prohibited from classroom instruction according to the state statutes. The accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination. A is for Activists is clearly propaganda. According to the summary of the peer reviews, it's defined as being unapologetic about activism, aimed at indoctrinating youth into the partisan principles of Marxist-inspired ideology at an age where they're not capable of subjecting it to critical analysis. Age and grade level of students. Reviewers cannot agree on the age appropriateness of this book, although the author states he wrote it for his 2-year-old son, because it is written in a style aimed at toddlers, using vocabulary of middle schoolers to adjust topics taught in college, if even that. Maturity of the students. Students K-5 do not have the maturity or background knowledge necessary to engage in the philosophical, political, and ideological topics presented in this book. Erring on the side of caution. Given the concerns raised by the publisher, peer, and crowdsourced reviews, the likely hesitancy to read this book aloud publicly, and the absence of a similar but recommended book, D is for Democracy, missing from the school collection, caution would dictate not selecting this text. So to the broad question of, is A for Activists suited to the student needs and appropriate for the age and grade level, the basis of which I made my challenge, it is not. And with that, I'll yield my time back.
Thank you, Dr. Muro. I'd leave the floor to the district, please.
I have no questions for this witness.
Thank you. All right, no questions to the witness. District, you may make your appeal.
Should I stay at the stand here?
If she has any other witnesses, she should.
Do you have any other witnesses? I didn't hear you mention any.
I had asked that the media specialist of the school would be present.
And she is so present.
Can I have a moment to open my computer, pull out my questions for her? I didn't know how this worked, so I have my questions written down.
Yes, if you have someone, excuse me. Yes, and they can come forward. Who is your witness?
Amanda Swall?
And I think we've set up Ms. Swall and the witnesses to sit at the desk that's right in front of the podium.
Okay, thank you.
So Ms. Swall, if you'd come over.
Would you please state your name and your position?
Amanda Swall, Media Specialist, Terwilliger.
Okay, you're the witness for Dr. Muro? I don't have any questions. District, do you have questions of this witness?
I will after Dr. Marul asks her the questions.
Okay, Dr. Muro, what are your questions for your witness?
but both of you need to turn your mics on.
Sorry, thank you. Why is it doing that? Can you just get my telephone? That's my staff assistant. But every time I move, it disappears. Oh, it worked. Okay, thank you. All right. Hello, Ms. Small. How are you?
Afternoon.
So my question for you is, did you complete the library media and instructional media training?
Yes, twice.
Okay. So you're aware of the criteria that I shared for selection?
Or library selection criteria, yes.
Yeah, for slides 11 that had the topics that should be taken into consideration?
You have to respond with the word, not the hitch,
Oh, sorry.
because of the,
My question was that she would be familiar then with slide 11, which highlighted the different topics for selection, considerations to be made, the one that I kept going back towards, the blue one.
Yes.
Okay, good. Do you know when this book was acquired, and were you part of that acquisition process?
This book was donated approximately 2020 at the old school location.
Were you the media specialist then?
Yes.
Was there a stakeholder review for this text?
No.
Question. So if this book is in the library, can a teacher or staff member select to read it to their students during their media special class?
Yes, they could.
Could a teacher select that book and take it into the classroom and use it for a lesson plan?
It's not instructional material, so no.
So they could not take it into the classroom. But they could, during their media class, the media special that the kids have, it could be selected as the book that's read aloud to them.
If it's not instructional, it would be advised not to. It could be placed in the classroom library for students to read on their own, but not instructional purposes.
You said it could be placed in a classroom library?
Yes.
That's interesting. But for example, I know my son goes, I think, once or twice a week to the media, and he has media special, and they read books to him. Is there anything that would stop that book from being picked up and read to the group of students?
It is not a book that I would select for,
But there's no protocol prohibiting it. There's nothing that would impede that being used as the instructional book for the day.
no.
Okay. Also, if I were to say, I don't want my son to have access to this book, let's say this one particularly, when they're in the library circulating and the books are on the shelves and they can pick up and touch and look at whatever they want, how would he be limited from having access to that book?
The primary students do not have free range of the library completely. They are restricted to, especially kindergarten and first grade, are restricted to the easy section, which is our picture books, mostly for K to 2. No one has, they don't have free range where they're just looking at all books throughout the library.
Would this book be available in that section?
No.
What age is this book targeted to?
Based on the interest level, it is K to 5.
K to 5? K to 5. That's different than what you told me when I'd asked you about it, right? K to 5. Definitely different than what I was told initially when I asked about the age appropriateness for this book. Was I not told that it was for grades 4th through 7th?
When you approached me at the open house, and we looked it up, and we looked at the one review, it said 4 to 7.
Okay, so you did tell me it was for 4 to 7, and now you're saying it's for K to 5.
Yes, on subsequent reviews.
I don't know if you would know the answer to this, because I might have to ask Ms. Duval, but when you had the library advisory councils evaluating the appropriateness of this book, what age were they told that it was targeting
For this book,
for this book?
we didn't have a library advisory council reviewing that book.
There was a library council, there was a meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
My question was just, when you guys had the library advisory council meeting to evaluate this book, what were the members instructed regarding the age appropriateness? What ages were they told that this book was indicated for?
I believe we saw a variety from pre-K to 3rd and K to 5 and 4 to 7.
What do you mean? You saw a variety? I don't know what you mean.
From the different sources that we looked at,
Okay.
the peer reviews, there were varying interest levels.
So the council members, when evaluating age appropriateness, understood that there was no consensus on what the target age was for this book?
Yes, but with the understanding that our school serves K through 5.
Okay. Who was sitting on that library council meeting?
Myself, our principal, Harbor, 2 parents,
Do you have their names, please?
Miss Ladkanai,
Laknai?
Ladkanai,
Laknai?
Miss Galvez, a ESP para, Miss Cruz, a 5th grade teacher, Miss Thompson, and a multi-grade teacher, Miss Shunakis.
I have Swall, Harbor, Lackney, Galvez, Cruz, Thompson, and Sunakis. But there's one more in the notes.
Oh, Miss Berklew, a
Burke?
community member.
Burke?
Yes, Miss Berklew.
Berklow?
Berklew.
Berklew? The reason why I ask, as was pointed out earlier by Ms. Siegel, it's public record to give the names of the people involved, and my name was readily given to the press, yet it's taken till this moment right now for me to know who was sitting on that library advisory council meeting, and I have asked for it publicly multiple times. So I just want to point that out for the record. Some people get the information given to them, other people do not. I appreciate you sharing that. I will overlook or not dig into the point, the fact that you have 8 members sitting on a council that should have only been 5, and the fact that their notes and their votes, half of them left it blank what their actual vote was. There's comments, and those comments showed a lot of lack of consensus over the appropriateness, but the protocols were not followed appropriately. Let me see if I have anything else for you. Oh, if I were to specifically ask you to limit my son's access to books that promote Marxist ideology, would you be able to do that, and would you have flagged this book?
If you gave me a list of titles, authors, subject matter, yes.
So it would be up to me to go through the entire library to find out which ones have Marxist ideology?
We could work collaboratively, finding those certain, topics within books, yes. Okay, I think I'll ask my questions to the other representatives, but I just want to thank you for coming today.
Thank you. District, do you have a cross-exam?
Just briefly, Ms. Swall. You have classes that come into the library with their teacher, correct? Yes.
Yes, yes.
And has any teacher ever read this book to their class in the library?
No,
This book is not an instructional book, meaning it's not a book that teachers teach from in their classroom, correct?
correct.
And it's not a book that is part of the curriculum of any elementary grade class, correct?
Correct.
You have to answer out loud for this lady here. And you got the book from a donation. Do you know where the donation was from?
At the time, we had a project makeover at our school, so I think it's a group of different volunteers that help with that project. So someone from that group donated the books after the makeover.
And you now know that to be a national group that provides books to schools on a variety of different topics, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Has Dr. Marule ever asked you to limit her child's access to this book?
No,
Has anyone ever asked you to limit access to this, their child access to this book?
No.
You made a phrase, you called a phrase free range. Does that mean the ability of a child to run around the library and pick whatever book they want?
Right.
Are kindergartners allowed to free range in the 300 section?
No.
Is this book in the 300 section?
Yes.
So there would be no way Dr. Marul's child would be able to go to that book if he slipped away from his class or was even allowed to walk around and look at books, correct?
Correct. And yeah.
You were involved with this book challenge with the other folks that you've mentioned. What was your involvement?
I served as the role of the media specialist, as a participant.
And was Patty Duval there also, who's the district media specialist?
Yes.
But she was not a voting member, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did everybody give a chance to read the book?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have discussion among the group about the content of the book?
Yes.
And what was the tenor of that discussion?
You know, also, that the book would be hard for us, many students to, you know, younger students to understand. Older students could, you know, perform research, looking at, you know, to find out more, what do these words mean? But that it was, you know, it was a varying range of levels.
Yes, okay. Was the consensus to keep the book on the shelf?
Yes.
Were there any dissenters to that decision?
No.
Thank you very much. I have nothing else to ask this
Am I-
lady.
Am I allowed to follow up or no?
I'll give you one question, Dr. Miller.
I'm sorry?
I'll give you one question. If you have a follow-up, please.
Only one?
Yes, time.
Okay. Based on the criteria that I went over very thoroughly, and specifically on the one about without bias or indoctrination, would you change your opinion now on the acceptability of this book, or do you still stand by your judgment that this book meets the criteria for selection?
No, you cannot answer that question. You have already submitted your analysis of that book. Thank you. All right,
And can I have a follow-up question, because you didn't let me ask my question?
that was your one.
You didn't tell me you were going to veto it.
Well, because that has already been done and has been filed.
And I'm not a lawyer. You didn't tell me that it was going to be vetoed, and then,
Sorry, Dr. Muir. Thank you. Do you have any other, Dr. Muir, witnesses?
no.
That's it. All right. At this time, we will move to the district for Dr. Siegel.
Yes,
Attorney Siegel.
Ms. Siegel, my doctor is only a Juris Doctor.
Sorry,
I don't choose to use that
I got you.
honorific. I would like to ask the principal of Terwilliger, Heather Harbor, if you'll come and take the hot seat, ma'am. If you don't mind, I'm a little more comfortable standing up
Oh, very much so.
when I do some of this.
Okay.
Can you all hear me? Okay, good. Would you tell the hearing officer and Dr. Marul your name and where you're employed?
Heather Harbor, Alachua County Public Schools, principal at Terwilliger Elementary.
And how long have you been the principal at Terwilliger?
This is my second year.
Okay. How long have you worked for the district?
This is my 19th year with Alachua County Public Schools.
Okay. You were involved with the book challenge made by Dr. Marul on the book A is for Activists, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Dr. Marul has a child in your school?
She does.
What grade level?
He's in first grade.
Okay. How did you first become aware there was a challenge?
Dr. Marul submitted a citizen's request form via email to me on September 20th.
Okay.
Does that count, because she was aware of my concern way before that?
Excuse me.
Excuse me, you cannot interrupt,
Sorry,
Dr.
not a
Muir.
lawyer.
Continue, Attorney.
What did you do once you became aware of Dr. Marul's challenge?
The official challenge was submitted to Patty Duval, the district media specialist, along with Miss Amanda Swall, our school media specialist.
And were you involved with selection of the committee that would analyze this book?
Yes, I did provide input.
How did you all decide to select the people on the committee?
When it came to staff, we wanted to select teachers from a variety of range of students that they serve. So one of our teachers selected was from the older grades, and one of our teachers selected was multi-age. When it came to parents, we selected those that we knew were in support of participating in the ongoings of the school. We do have a small amount of parent involvement at Terwilliger, and so we selected parents that we knew were involved and knew the ongoings of our school.
And was there anybody else on the committee? I know Ms. Swall was on the committee with you. Anybody else?
Ms. Swall was on the committee, I was on the committee. We don't have a counselor currently at Terwilliger, so we did not have a counselor present. We did have a non-instructional staff member present to give another perspective, and we also had a community member present. This community member also serves on our school advisory council.
And you heard Ms. Swall's testimony. Were those names correct?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. Where was the meeting held?
In our media center,
Yeah. Did Dr. Marule attend the meeting?
she did not.
I wasn't noticed.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Not a lawyer.
Who ran the meeting?
Ms. Duval facilitated and Ms. Swall assisted with facilitating as well.
What occurred at the meeting?
We looked at selection criteria put forth before media specialists along with statutory requirements. We looked at Ms. Swall, we actually read the book there at the meeting and looked at peer reviews, a variety of them. And then the floor was opened up for discussion and input from each of the members that served on that committee before we were able to make a decision individually and then a team decision.
Okay. And do you agree with Ms. Swall's testimony that it was a consensus was the book was to remain on the shelf?
That was the consensus.
Okay. Did you relay the decision to Dr. Marule?
Yes, I did.
How did you let her know?
I submitted a letter to her via email.
Did she respond to your letter?
She did.
What was her response?
I believe she thanked me. She asked about the council members. She also submitted a follow-up citizens request for review for another book.
Okay. And did you write her a letter? I mean, did she ask you to facilitate moving to the next level, the district level?
She has shared that she is interested in moving it to the next level, and we have referred her to Mr. Kevin Berry
Okay.
to follow
I'll
procedure.
inquire of him next, but Dr. Marule, if you'd like to ask any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Harber.
Hello.
I think it's just ridiculous that we're at this point with this. But anyway, thank you for coming today, and I appreciate you being here. I guess you wouldn't have taken the library media, instructional media training, would you have?
No, I haven't.
No, that's not something in your capacity. Were you familiar with the criteria that I shared on slide 11, which said the considerations would include student ability to comprehend the material, the degree with which the material would be explained, supplemented by classroom instruction, the educational purpose of the material, the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination, and so forth?
We looked at the statute and we looked at the selection criteria, which was what was used to make this decision. Instructional requirements were not used in the decision. But yes, I am.
So this is from the Library Media and Instructional Media Training Guide, specifically for library media specialists for selecting texts in the library. It's not about the instructional materials in the classroom. You're clear that that's what
We
this is
went
from?
over those at the council meeting,
These ones.
the selection criteria and the statutory requirements.
Did you go over this slide 11 from the training, which says student ability to comprehend the material, to the degree with which the material would be explained, supplemented by classroom instruction, the educational purpose, the broad portrayal without bias or indoctrination, age, grade, level of students, maturity of students, error on side of caution?
I honestly don't know without looking back at that slide and looking back at the presentation from the meeting.
Do you think that this book has bias?
I don't know.
Do you think the students are mature enough to understand the complex ideological and political statements made in this book?
No, I don't.
Did you consult with any of the school teachers that would, it's hard for me to make the argument because I was told that this book was supposed to be for 4th to 7th, so my questions are geared towards that, but it doesn't even matter if it was for K through 5. But nonetheless, let's say it's on the upper end and you agree that the students don't have the maturity to understand this book and you're not willing to say that the book is biased. Did you consult with the older let's give them the benefit of the doubt to the maturity, to the oldest students in the school. Did you consult with any fifth grade or fourth grade teachers to ask them if they thought this book would be supplemental or beneficial to their educational materials?
We did get input from a fifth grade teacher who served on the committee with us. Yes, Ms. Thompson.
Did you have input from any others that disagreed with that perspective?
We did not have any disagreement.
Did you have any teachers that expressed disagreement with this book being appropriate?
Not in the proceedings we followed, no. So we had a K-5 teacher and a fifth grade teacher.
I don't mean the hearing, I just meant in your task as a principal, talking with the school community, did you have any teachers express concern about the appropriateness of this
There was
book?
not discussion outside of those proceedings. So no.
You didn't speak to any other teachers about this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I assume that you would agree that despite our political differences or anyone's ideological stances, that the criteria that's established by the state is the criteria that needs to be upheld for the selection of library materials. Would you not agree to that statement? Yes, I assumed you would. Also, is it not true that books that are donated are also subject to the same criteria evaluation as books that are
That is
acquired? Had you been presented with all those criterion on slide 11, would your opinion have changed about the appropriateness of this book?
Am I supposed to answer that question?
I think she
Repeat
fell
your
asleep.
question again, Dr. Miller.
It was the same question that you asked Ms. Swall that you told her not to answer.
Stands. Objection.
I don't know what that means.
She does not have to answer. The decision has been made.
Okay. Can you confirm that I did indeed ask you who was on the library council and you did not share that information with me?
Yes.
Was there a reason why you didn't share those names with me?
Yes, I submitted your questions to Ms. Duval and Ms. Siegel.
And why didn't, oh, you don't know, they told you to not answer
Well,
me?
It would be a public records request that you would submit.
So according to what Ms. Siegel said, by law, you'd have to give that information or share it with me, right?
You don't submit public records requests through me as the principal, so no.
So the media I'm thinking out loud, the media journalist who doxed my identity would have had to have submitted a public records request to have got my information?
You would have submitted a public record.
What?
You would have submitted a public records request through the staff attorney's office.
I'm asking for the journalist who got my information
I don't,
within days of this hearing. You don't know.
I don't know anything.
I don't know either. I don't want to get cut off, so. Oh, I was just mumbling that I don't want to get cut off, so I want to make sure I ask all the questions I could think of. I don't know, do you see any curricula in K-5 that would be supplemented by this textbook?
No. It's
No.
not a curriculum material.
And the degree to which the material would be explained or supplemented by classroom instruction?
Again, it's not a curriculum material.
What would the educational purpose of this book be?
This is a library book that's available for checkout. There are different criteria for library materials than there are for curriculum materials in classroom.
Oh, I agree. I'm going from the guidelines for selecting library materials.
This meets those criteria in our opinion.
Okay, if it meets the criteria, in what way can you defend that it meets an educational purpose? Because the consideration should include the educational purpose of the material. And you're saying that it meets, excuse me, she's the witness. Yeah.
Continue.
Dr. Merle, if you would talk a little slower, this court reporter is having...
I'm really sorry. I'm from Philadelphia, and I just can't get over it. I'm sorry. My question, I'll try to phrase it better. I know this is a library book. I know that this is not a classroom instructional material. So the guidelines and considerations that I'm reading are for the selection of content in the school media library. And that needs to be suited to student needs and appropriate for age and grade level. And the guidelines include certain considerations. One of those considerations is the educational purpose of the material. My question is, what is the educational purpose of this material?
I don't know. I'm telling you that I believe that this book meets statutory requirements and media selection criteria.
Okay, but this is the criteria, and you're saying it doesn't meet it, so I'm just confused.
I didn't say it doesn't meet it.
You said you didn't know. I'm sorry. So students' ability to comprehend the material, and talking about the maturity of the students, you agree that they're probably not mature enough to understand this? So they're probably not able to comprehend it. Is that not correct?
I didn't say students were not mature enough to comprehend. Those are words that.
What did you say earlier? What did you say earlier when I asked you about the maturity of the students to understand the philosophical, ideological, and political ideas introduced in the book?
You asked about some of the meanings that you're interpreting from the book and the students' understanding of those meanings, to which I don't know that all students would understand the meanings of those things.
Okay.
Can they access the text and understand the words? Yes, they can. This is available for all elementary students K-5, and based on what was provided by the publisher and peer reviews, checkout is in alignment with those age groups.
You say that, but it doesn't align with the actual consideration, so it's contradictory to say that it meets the guidelines when I'm looking at the guidelines and it's not meeting the guidelines, but we'll leave that for the hearing officer to determine. Lastly, on erring on the side of caution, there was a lack of consensus in the meeting reviewing the book about the age appropriateness. Some said the younger readers aren't going to understand it, the older readers aren't going to be attracted to it. It's an ABC book. There was, here, you've acknowledged that many students will not be mature enough to understand this. It does not supplement classroom instruction. So all these factors taken into consideration, erring on the side of caution, would you not agree, would have been to not select this text?
I would not agree.
Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Any other witnesses? Dr. C.
Yes, two more, and they will be brief, hopefully. I would call Kevin Berry. Mr. Berry, would you tell us your name and what you do for a living?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Berry. I am the Director of K-12 Curriculum with Alachua County Public Schools.
And how long have you been in that position?
I've been in this current position, this is beginning my third year.
And how long have you been with the Alachua County Public Schools?
This is my 27th year with Alachua County Public Schools.
And would you start out as a teacher?
I was actually a paraprofessional with students with disabilities, and then I taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for 15 years, then was a school administrator for 3 before coming to the district office 8 years ago.
And you currently are on the district level, correct?
Yes, I'm on the district level challenge committee.
Okay. You are familiar with children's literature, are you not?
Yes, ma'am.
You heard Dr. Marul's presentation where she mentioned a bunch of things like Flesch-Kincaid, Lexile levels, quantitative text complexity measures. Are you familiar with what those are?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they applicable to the selection of a book for the library?
Typically, those are used when selecting materials for instructional purposes.
Okay. Was this book selected for instructional purposes?
No, this was a library material.
Okay. What is readability?
So there's a variety of different measures that we had a chance to see a little bit earlier about readability. Typically, they use different types of ways of computing levels of readability using vocabulary, syntax, and different types of, I guess, measures of words and the way they fit together in text.
Is readability a factor in selecting or permitting a book to stay on the shelves of a library rather than being used for classroom instruction?
So we like to use peer-reviewed journal recommendations because we are concerned with, we don't want to have our stance be the stance that used to limit or control what is available in public libraries. So we look at as many outside sources as we can before making that determination. Some of them do include readability in that, but it's usually one piece of a much bigger picture, similar to the text complexity piece that Dr. Marul presented earlier.
Okay. You were part of the district review team that reviewed the appeal of Dr. Marul's challenge when she was dissatisfied with the district, with the school level determination, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you find out that Dr. Marul was making a challenge at the district level?
So through an email discussion, I believe Mrs. Harbour forwarded me and included me on the email where the decision of the school level committee was presented, and then Dr. Marul let us know that she wished to escalate it to the district level review committee.
Okay, was this a publicly noticed meeting?
This district level committee meeting was a publicly noticed meeting.
And where did you meet?
We met here at the district office in one of our conference rooms.
Okay. And about when was this? I don't need a
I think
specific
it was November
date.
14th at 4 o'clock.
Did Dr. Marul, you're
Because
pretty
it's the 14th
specific.
today, so
Well
it's
done.
easy for me to remember that, yeah.
Did Dr. Marul attend the meeting?
She did not.
Okay. Did any members of the public attend?
Yes, I believe there are probably 15 to 20 other members of the public present.
Okay, tell us what occurred at that meeting.
Sure. We had 3 titles that we were reviewing in that meeting. So we began the meeting with Ms. Duval, who was facilitating it. She presented to us both a presentation and a packet of information connected to each of the titles. We looked at selection criteria. We looked at statutory language, and I believe there were excerpts from statutes in our folder, as well as peer-reviewed journal examples. We also had a chance to review not only the completed form from Dr. Marul, but also the responses from the school level committee. So after she presented kind of an overview of each, we looked at one title at a time. We reviewed the title or read the title. For this book, we all had a chance to read the title while present. Then we did our internal interpretation, had discussions, and did our separate votes.
Who was on the district committee?
So I may not get all the names, but I was on the committee, Kevin Berry. We had Patty Duval as our district media specialist. Dr. Tony Griffin is our district school counseling supervisor. We also had Dr. John Rame. He's our social studies curriculum specialist. We had a parent also present of a student in the grade level who would have access to this book. I do not recall the parent's name.
Okay. Did you all discuss your opinions regarding this book?
We did.
Would you describe the contents of that discussion?
Sure. There was a varied discussion connected to the purposes of an ABC book like this, which this is also known as a concept book that looks at a specific concept such as activism and to what extent students would be able to comprehend all of the elements, and if they would have just a global understanding of the overall intent of the book of defining what is activism. We had conversations with members of the team about the illustrations and different other aspects of the text and connected that to what would be allowable based on selection criteria and statutory language.
What was the consensus of the group regarding A is for activist?
The consensus of the group was that it did meet selection criteria, so the vote was to keep the book at circulation at the current level.
Okay. And did you then write a letter to Dr. Marul regarding your findings?
Yes, I believe I sent that the next morning to indicate the consensus of the committee so that she would be aware of the decision.
Okay. And did she write back asking you to send it on to this level of a hearing?
She did.
Okay. Based on your experience teaching children in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and your work as a curriculum specialist, do you have an opinion whether this book is a suitable book to be on a library shelf, not as an instructional material, but on a library shelf for children in the K through 5 grade levels?
Objection. You didn't let me ask that question to them.
Excuse me. Repeat your question again and then get a clarity of what you're saying, Attorney Siegel.
Okay. I'm asking Mr. Berry if he has an opinion whether A is for Activists is an appropriate book to be kept on the shelves of a library in a elementary school, K through 5.
Did you have that question on your questionnaire when the committee met?
I cannot recall exactly what was on the questionnaire when the committee met. I feel comfortable responding to the question.
But he already voted on this, and you did not let me ask
Excuse
the
me,
same question.
Excuse me, Dr. Muro.
I just want a fair trial here.
You don't recall having that on your questionnaire?
My vote was whether or not we should continue the book within circulation based on the criteria, or if we
And your answer was to keep it. Now,
answer was-
Dr. Siegel, are you asking, would he change his decision now? Or he,
Withdraw the question. He's
Thank
already
you.
clarified the answer.
all right, thank you,
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
thank you. Do you have any other witnesses, Attorney Siegel?
I think Dr. Marul may.
Oh, I'm sorry, you do have cross-examination, I'm sorry.
I think the most complicated part of this process is the microphone. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Berry. Thank you for coming this afternoon. I appreciate seeing you, and I appreciate your commitment to the district. I've met you in various capacities, and I'm very grateful for your service. So I do have a couple questions for you. One thing I want to clarify that I keep hearing brought up is my attendance to the library council meetings, and if I was there or not there. If I were to attend, would I be allowed to speak or share my opinion about the process?
My understanding is you would not be able to.
That is my understanding too, and hence I don't see much purpose in attending. This is the first time that I'm being given the opportunity to share my side. Okay, you made a distinction earlier in your response about classroom instructional materials versus library instructional materials. I don't know if in your role that you also had to do the library media training. Did you have to do that?
I did not have to do that training.
Are you familiar with the content in that training?
I'm familiar with the content based on what was presented to us, both to support administrators with the understanding of what it is, and as well as what was presented to us at our review meetings.
So would it be correct to kind of understand that your understanding is limited to what was shared to you in those meetings?
We did not have the 3-hour training. We had kind of an overview of the training. So it was limited to both what we presented to our administrators as well as what was presented at our review committee meetings.
I'm not sure who it took 3 hours to do the training. I did it in probably 45 minutes, but okay. Well, in the training on slide 31, there is a section about selection criteria that is common for instructional materials and library materials and reading lists. So these are criteria that apply across the board to all of them. Factors to consider for any material include avoiding unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination. Also, I'm skipping over the ones that aren't really relevant. The age of the students who normally could be expected to have access to the material, educational purpose to be served by the material, the degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction, again, the broad representation without bias or indoctrination, and being free of pornography. Do you think that this book contains unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination?
So I guess I'm supposed to say yes or no to that. And so my answer to that is no. And if I can explain my reason for that. When I look at the text that is designed for students at the elementary level based on our peer-reviewed, I think about what would an interpretation look like. And I think it's really difficult for us to predict how a student who's 6 or 8 or 10 would interpret the text that's there. So that's why I think it's so important for us as a district to depend on external sources such as those peer-reviewed journals. There could be an argument that said that this is all about just being active in your community, which is aligned to kindergarten and first grade social studies standards. But I also see, where other people may have disagreements with certain references within the text. So when we are building classroom libraries with diverse access to diverse literature, we want to take into consideration multiple perspectives. So that's why, when we're making these types of decisions, at least when I'm voting on whether or not to retain something, I look very specific about what I see as present in the standards and in the different resources, because I wouldn't want my interpretation of whether I agree with something in a book to influence my decision.
Okay, well, I think I could summarize by that very long answer that it wasn't an easy yes/no answer. It took you a moment even to say no, and then but, and a long explanation. So this is just one factor to consider. So I would say that wasn't a definite yes, keep it. It was, well, so take that. You have to consider other factors. But my question for you, Z is for Zapatistas, of course. What does this communicate to anybody except for a positively balanced statement about a Marxist movement in Chiapas, Mexico? Where is the critical thinking or the comparing it to other sources, no other sources in the library, Do you not think that this would be an unsolicited theory that leads to student indoctrination or propaganda, at least, at minimum?
So, I mean, it's hard for me to interpret what other people would interpret from that, but what I will say is, you know, we saw a great example of the use of the ELA benchmarks, which are part of our instructional use. But, you know, when we look at these materials, this is more for independent reading or reading with a parent or things like that. So, you know, it's hard for me to think about interpreting in that because that's not the purpose of why we have those materials.
Okay, on that, I have a couple questions on that. On that, if this is for reading with a parent who's going to guide you,
Maybe.
then it should be in the public library where the parents are going. This is for kids to take out. It's not supposed to be used as instructional material, so there is no adult intended to be reading this book to the students. So at best, you're saying a student would be attracted to this book, would pick it up, would take it home, and would have a parent at home who could share and explain this book. My question, as a follow-up to that, is before this whole issue and this challenge of this book, were you able to define who the Zapatistas were?
I had a familiarity of Zapatista.
You're one of the very few educated adults that even know what I'm talking about when I say Zapatistas. So I think it's fair to say that this exceeds well beyond common knowledge of even the common parent who's trying to read this book to their child. Thus, I do think it's an unsolicited theory that may lead to indoctrination because it's positively balanced slogan to approve the Zapatistas. So on the benchmark or on that consideration, I would say this book does not convince you or me that it doesn't contain unsolicited theories. But then move into the degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction. Please tell me, to what degree will the material in this book be supplemented or explained by classroom instruction in K-5?
So again, the only connection I would see would be connected to, you know, in kindergarten, first grade social studies, students learn about the community and different things they can do to support their community. But when we're typically referencing selection criteria for books, we're looking primarily for providing a wide variety of literature for student access. So, I mean, I can, if we really want to think about it, I could see that, but I don't know that there would be any connection to some of the pieces that we were concerned about earlier today or you were concerned about earlier today when you presented those.
So with that last part, you're saying it doesn't align with the benchmarks as put out in the best standards K-5?
Activism does align with the standards for best standards to be advocates for your community, though interpreting what that activism looks like and what your political stance is not aligned with the best standards.
Where is that benchmark?
It's in the social studies benchmarks, and so we can take a look.
Advocate for your community.
It's not to advocate, it's to be a participant in your community.
I think those things are very different. An activist and a participant are very balanced political terms. I think we all know that. Okay. Again, avoiding indoctrination or bias. Would you say that this book is biased or free of bias?
I do think it is free of bias. Or a student who is 6 or 7 years old. When an adult reads it, I think we can look at it differently because we have different background knowledge that we depend on.
So what I'm hearing is there's bias, but you have to be smart enough to pick up on it or mature enough to pick up on it.
I think one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing is trying to make sure that our own personal biases do not influence the texts we select. And that is why when you ask those questions about bias and when you ask about my opinion, I have a difficult time answering because I really think it's important for us not to, as a district that serves public school students, to use that to make any of our decisions. We use the criteria, we use the statutes, we use the language to make the decisions.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, and I think it's very important to separate our own political stance from our professional duties, and the professional duties in your case in the media specialist is to adhere to the guidelines and the statutes. Fortunately, in this case, it's not up to your political decision. The statutes very clearly indicate that we should be promoting the principles of our government, which include
Dr. Jackson, I have to object. She is now speaking and
Commentary,
making a
yes.
speech, not asking a question.
Yes, thank you.
I was
Objection,
whatever.
sustained. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, can you just speak to the illusions? Is that, I don't know if that's quite the right word, but for the images You said that you had looked at the images and had a discussion about the images, but what exactly